We are lucky to have Dr. Anjan Butte, who's a cardiologist at Emerson Hospital. We have worked with her since 1996, and I will share that when I began at Emerson almost 10 years ago, Dr. Butte was one of the people who gave me a friendly smile and really helped take me under her wing, and so I really appreciate that, and it's just such an honor to introduce her today. I won't read her bio, but it's in here, so please, Dr. Butte, come on up.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for the introduction. So my role today is to talk about menopause, the favorite topic. So, what is menopause? We all know that. It is loss of ovarian and follicular function, decrease in ovarian hormones, and permanent cessation of menstrual cycle. So, average age of menopause in industrialized countries is about 52 years. And as you know, over the years, women have increased in their longevity, and average age of women in the United States is 81 years. So we spend 1/3 of our lives in menopausal state. Well, quality of life is important in every stage in life, but especially now that we're entering midlife, it's more important because we have paid our dues, raised our kids, hopefully have career, and now are ready to enjoy life. And if life is ruined by the menopausal symptoms, it's not worth it, right? And this is a global problem, and if you know, there's over $15 billion market to treat menopausal symptoms. So, I just want to say, the number one cause of death in women is cardiovascular disease. It's not breast cancer, it's not all the other gynecological cancers combined. It is cardiovascular disease. And in general, women present about 10 years after men. And we think, and it's actually proven, that it is because of the protective effect of estrogen and progesterone in their system. So once we reach menopause, all bets are off, and we are at the same risk of cardiovascular disease as men are. So what really happens is, at the onset of menopause, there is acceleration of vascular aging, which is different than we see gradual loss of function with chronological aging. This leads to hypertension and hardening of the arteries, called atherosclerosis. There is progressive stiffening of the arteries with their ability and lack of ability to dilate and increase the blood flow when it's needed. So this happens because estrogens play a significant role in the function of endothelium. Endothelium is the innermost lining of the arteries everywhere in the body. It is the biggest organ of the body, even bigger than the skin, and it is very active and produces lots of hormones. One of the main hormones is called endothelial-derived relaxation factor, which is actually nitric oxide. It dilates the arteries. So with menopause, there is decrease in the production of nitric oxide and decrease in vasodilation. Estrogen also decreases the production of a substance called endothelin by the same organ, which causes vasoconstriction. It also decreases, there is also increase in the shear forces. Shear forces are a simple rule of physics. Whenever any fluid travels in the pipes, like in the arteries, it produces a stress on the endothelium per unit, and it's called shear forces. Because of lack of vasodilatation, the shear forces are increased and leads to hardening of the arteries. And there is also decrease in the vasoactive substances, and there is increased production of radicals and endothelial, leading to endothelial dysfunction, which I'll talk about later. So it's unlikely the menopause per se does these things. It has to be something, and studies have shown that it's more likely that it increases the adverse effect of the risk factors leading to coronary artery disease. And I would like to spend a minute about the risk factors of coronary artery disease. The traditional risk for everybody, men and women, are age, smoking, sedentary lifestyle, hypertension, diabetes, dyslipidemia, and family history of premature coronary artery disease. As you can see, most of the risk factors are modifiable, and some of them are not. Age, for example, we're lucky to live long enough to have all these problems. I mean, what's the alternative, right? So The second thing is genetic factors. Nobody gets to choose their families. So if you're born with a bad set of genes, but if you control the other risk factors, the expression of those bad genes is much less than it would have been if you did not control all those. So it does increase the adverse effects of your natural risk factors. So SWAN study was a study of women across the nation, which proved that with menopause, there is change in the metabolic profile, and in a bad way. Changes in metabolic profile start with the perimenopausal stage, and they start with the elevation of follicular stimulating hormones called FSH. These are the levels that your OBGYNs do to see whether you are perimenopausal or not. FSH level goes up when you are perimenopausal, implying that you need more follicular stimulating hormones to produce the same amount of estrogen. So that's when the triglycerides, total cholesterol, low density lipoproteins, apolipoproteins, they all go up. So effect of menopause on high density lipoproteins, which we think are protective, is not clear. They may stay the same. HDL level may decrease or it may even increase. But the census is that the quality of high density lipoproteins is decreased, therefore it's not that effective. So with menopause, there is change in the metabolic profile. There is a syndrome, we call it metabolic syndrome, which is a constellation of a few risk factors: hypertension, dyslipidemia, impaired glucose tolerance, that is, in other words, prediabetes, and central obesity. So estrogens play a significant role and main role in distribution of fat storage in the body. During early years, due to hormones, there's more fat deposition in the thighs, buttocks, and less in the central area. And women tend to gain weight in the midsection with menopause, with advancing age anyway. But with menopause, there is a change in the body composition, meaning the fat to lean body mass ratio changes. And there's significantly increased risk of weight gain in the midsection, but that implies there is visceral fat, and that leads to increased resistance to insulin and all the side effects that come along with higher levels of insulin. And it is difficult to lose weight despite keeping healthy lifestyle. So then the next thing that happens is worsening of oxidative stresses. Oxidative stress is the natural byproducts of chemicals that happen in the body with all the biochemical reactions going on. Oxidative stress and age go hand in hand. So overall, it is overall production of the free radicals that is due to lack of oxygen. Estrogen is an antioxidant, and if the antioxidants level goes down, there is increased incidence of atherosclerosis. So estrogens are antioxidant at normal levels or higher levels, but paradoxically, they become pro-oxidants at lower level, and that leads to more hardening of the arteries. So, oxidative stresses are important to understand because they play a significant role in the symptoms that we experience. They increase inflammatory cytokines. The increased level of oxidized LDL, which is the actual portion of LDL which sticks to the arteries and causes plaque built up. And there is expression of angiotensin receptor 81 and vasoconstriction. And there is decrease in nitric oxide level, which relaxes the artery. And all this leads to smooth muscle proliferation in the arteries and leading to plaque buildup and also hardening of the arteries and atherosclerosis. So oxidative stresses propagate vasomotor symptoms in menopause. So all that I said up till now is slowly causing damage, but causes no symptoms at all. High blood pressure, uncontrolled high blood pressure, diabetes in early stages, high cholesterol does not cause any symptoms per se. The symptoms which catch attention is the vasomotor symptoms. So this stage of perimenopause is a hormonal roller coaster. So in a normal menstrual cycle, start making estrogen, and the mid-cycle level goes up, and this level drops, and finally we have the menstrual period, and this is the whole cycle. But with perimenopausal stage, the levels fluctuate, and they rise, and they fall erratically. So this results in hormonal influx, and which is unpredictable, and which is disruptive, and leads to a range of symptoms. So what happens is there's narrowing of the thermoneutral zone of the body, so that any little changes in your core temperature leads to these compensatory flushing and night sweats, which is the main problem. So if you're having night sweats or flushing, you are not alone. 80% of the women suffer from vasomotor symptoms, and it can start as early as 10 years prior to menopause and can last as late as 10 years after the menopause. So this leads to poor sleep, leads to irritability, lack of concentration, and reduced in quality of life. So these are more common in women, or they are women who have pre-existing, before menopause, obesity, cigarette smoking, level of anxiety, depression are more prone to have vasomotor symptoms. And for some reason, level of education is also related to premenopausal symptoms. So data on physical activity, diet, and alcohol consumption is not consistent. One would think that they help, but it's not consistent data. So then the second most important symptoms that people experience is palpitations. So what are palpitations? I hear people tell different things. It's a strange sensation in the chest. Some will say fluttering, missing beats, skipping, jumping, thumping, and racing of the heart. So this could last for a second, this could last for a few minutes. It can be very, very unsettling. And these palpitations actually are the misfiring of the electrical system of the heart. The heart, as you know, is a pump. It's made up of several components. The most common that we all know is the cardiac muscle. If cardiac muscle is damaged by heart attacks, or it can lead to heart failure, if by myocarditis leads to heart failure, then are the valves. With age, valves can become narrow, or they become incompetent, they start leaking, stenosis, and they can give symptoms. But the electrical system is the system which is a very organized system. Electrical signal starts at the top of the heart, and it progresses southwards, both atria, the upper chamber contract, and then signal goes down to the lower chamber, ventricles, and they contract, and that's the heartbeat. So this is caused by this very organized mechanism run by calcium pump, we call it. Calcium enters at the cellular level. Calcium enters the cardiac cell membrane, leads to change in the electrical system, and the proteins, actin and myosin, they contract, and contraction happens. So this system is very sensitive to if there's too much calcium goes in, or too little calcium goes in, and that can cause misfiring. And this system is very much affected by estrogen. So by the way, this calcium has nothing to do with the serum calcium level, nothing to do with the supplements that we eat. It is a well-maintained homeostasis in there. So with erratic and lack of entering with the radical fall and rise in the level of estrogen can lead to misfiring, leads to palpitations. Most of the time, they are not that significant, but there are other causes of palpitation which should be considered. Dehydration, excessive alcohol use, excessive caffeine use, and anxiety can cause this too. So palpitations need to be evaluated if they are associated with chest pain, shortness of breath, dizziness, lightheadedness, nausea, and vomiting, because then it could be something more serious. So one more. So third set of symptoms that people feel miserably is the genitourinary system. Lack of oxygen leads to dryness of clitoris, labia, vestibule, vagina, bladder, and urethra. And this leads to very uncomfortable symptoms of vaginal dryness, irritation, burning, itching, urinary urgency, frequency, frequent UTIs, and dyspareunia, the sexual dysfunction. So So now that we know what happens, and it's intuitive, all this happens due to lack of estrogen, we start supplementing, symptoms should go away. But thankfully, and there were actually the initial studies in early 90s, late 80s, showing the supplementation of hormones in postmenopausal women lead to improvement in symptoms. But thankfully, in medicine, we don't work on our hunches and intuitions. We are in the business of evidence-based medicine. So therefore, this study, Women's Health Initiative study, was designed. This was a very important landmark study at that time. And the purpose was to assess the major benefits, health benefits, and the risk of combined hormone replacement therapy in USA. So women were randomized to placebo-controlled, and it was a preventive trial. The planned duration was 8.5 years, and this was calculated by the statistician, because when we do any intervention, we have to calculate how long do we have to give this thing to make sure that it's a real effect. So that was planned study was 8.5 years, and more than 16,000 women were randomized with intact uterus in 40 US centers between 1993 and 1998. So the recipients received 0.625 milligrams of estrogen and 2.5 milligrams of progesterone, but that's important, the dose. And the age, other thing I forgot, the age of the women was from 50 to 79 years. There was a huge variation in the age. And the primary outcomes that we set out to test was incidence of coronary heart disease, whether it was angina, non-fatal myocardial infarction, and death, and invasive breast cancer. Additional outcomes, which we call it secondary outcomes, were pulmonary embolism, strokes, endometrial cancer, and colorectal cancer. This study was stopped after 5.2 years instead of 8.5 years of follow-up at the recommendations of Data Safety Monitoring Board because of adverse effects exceeded the benefits. So this was the final nail in the coffin of hormone replacement therapy. However, this study has a lot of flaws. And the message was correct that it doesn't prevent heart attacks, but the message was incorrect that it causes damage to all of them. First thing was the dose, 0.625 milligram was way higher than we now use. Second thing was the age range between 50 to 79-year-old. So the side effects or the adverse effect of Lipitor, of a lipid profile is usually 1 year after menopause and maximum 10 years. So many of the women were already 10, 15 years out of menopause. So they had higher risk of heart disease, not because of estrogen, because they were predisposed per se. Third thing was the preparation Premarin was synthetic estrogen made from horses or mares' estrogens. So human beings, women have only 3 kinds of estrogens: estradiol, Dr. Medalla will tell, estrione, estriol. However, mare has 34 kinds of estrogens, and there was recombinant, and one thing was maybe the preparations were not enough. So now the primary indication for hormone replacement therapy is management of moderate to severe vasomotor symptoms. It is not recommended for primary prevention of cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, or memory loss, because it doesn't do that. And decision to go on hormone replacement therapy requires consideration of your other risk factors. For example, if somebody has strong family history of coronary artery disease, they have high blood pressure and diabetes, but their blood pressure is controlled, diabetes is controlled, and they are suffering from vasomotor symptoms, they can take hormone replacement therapy. So in average women, benefits of hormone replacement therapy outweighs the risk as long as they are less than 60 years old and less than 10 years beyond the menopause. And so how do we treat it? So treatment is systemic, either the tablets or the transdermal patch. Some studies show the transdermal patch is better because it bypasses the hepatic liver metabolism, and there's less risk of pulmonary embolism or DVTs. So the dose now is 0.3 milligrams instead of 0.625, and progesterone is 0.025 milligrams instead of 2.5 milligrams. It takes 6 to 8 weeks to affect, and study shows the risk of breast cancer, if people are on estrogen and progesterone together, combined therapy, because they have uterus and that needs to be protected with progesterone, after 3 to 5 years, there is risk of breast cancer. But with estrogen alone, after 7 years, there was not increased risk of breast cancer. So, lifetime risk of breast cancer for everybody in this room, for everyone, is 10 to 15%, no matter how healthy you are. You have no strong family history. If you live long enough, there's 10 to 15% chance you will have breast cancer. But if you have hormone replacement therapy, that after 15 years goes up to 30%. So, generally, there is no systemic treatment for that, the topical preparations. Unfortunately, they don't work as well. As time goes, they get worse. And systemic hormone replacement therapy even makes them worse. So the best option is to go to Crystal and do the therapy. The only contraindication now is survivors of the breast cancer. For them, even the topical treatment should be prescribed after talking to the oncologist. I will leave you one message. I will say, yes, the number one cause of death in women is cardiovascular disease, and menopause just accelerates the atherosclerosis, which is a combination of a complex interaction between the cardiovascular risk factors and their accentuation during menopause. And this risk stems from exaggerated effects of changing physiology, effects of vasculature in all the organs, including cardiac, peripheral, cerebral system, changes in lipid profile, vascular stiffness, metabolic parameters. So the treatment strategies include control your coronary risk factors and then take the hormones if you need it.